Welcome to the Middle-Aged Hack channel. I am Stuart and I am your middle-aged hack, just a child of the 80s trying to make his way through the 20s. I'd love it if you come on the journey with me. Ready? Let's go. Well, I put a lot into this channel and I still haven't figured out what I really want it to be about. There are some channels that have different playlists for different topics, and then there are other channels where it's all one topic. I'm kind of trying to see what sticks before I decide what this channel is going to be about. In the meantime, I'm talking about subjects that are of interest to me because it is my channel. And I hope they are of interest to you. I hope that you tell your friends about it, that you like and subscribe, because I'm trying to grow to the point where I can monetize this channel, and I cannot do that without you. The subject this time around is a little bit more depressing than other subjects that I've done on the channel so far. Friends, I'm a member of Generation X. That generation nobody talks about. The millennials think that we're boomers, the boomers think that we're kids, and nobody really thinks that we know what we're doing. And sadly, based on some of the prominent members of Generation X, it's quite possible they're right. But there's also some really good, hard-working members of this generation. Just because we're not that big of a group compared to the boomers and the millennials doesn't mean that we're not doing good stuff. As a reminder, Generation X is the name given to anyone born between roughly 1965 and 1980. We're characterized by being the first generation to embrace cable television, to be the generation that first got into dial-up internet, and also we're the generation whose parents, both of them, went to work, oftentimes leaving us at home to our own devices for a very long period of time. We've grown up to be independent and to make our own mind up on things and not to be part of the masses, part of the flock. I tend to think, when I think of boomers and millennials, one thing they have in common is they tend to move in this big mass and really feel like the world is centered on them. That's not something that Generation X has ever had the luxury of enjoying. Well, if you were born between 1965 and 1980, and I'm making this in 2024, so you are somewhere between 44 and 59 years old. And that means you're planning for retirement. Most folks in Gen X can't retire until age 67. Only the very early members of Gen X can retire at 65. But if you're looking at getting Social Security, most of us, it's 67, or and I think for even the later Gen X, it might be 70. I'll have to do some research on that. But it's not that big of a time frame. For a lot of us who are in our mid to late 50s, we are looking at that time period where we have to start preparing for retirement, knowing that we've put aside enough money if we can, that our expenses are under control, and know what we're going to be able to budget for doing by the time we can actually retire. When you think about baby boomers, the younger generations think about baby boomers as having a really good work experience, an experience defined by employers who kept you there for a long period of time, gave you good pay and benefits, fixed benefit pension plans in a lot of cases, and you had a lot of opportunity to save for retirement. When we think about boomers, and really we've still got, mostly it's boomers who are obviously hitting the retirement age now, the feeling, especially among millennials, is that boomers need to get out of the way. that all the good jobs are being hoarded by boomers and millennials can't step up. I don't know if that's true or if that's just kind of ageist, but I understand why the millennials think that way. But from the point of view of a lot of us, and I think that late boomers are in the same boat that Gen X is, we're having to take partial retirement a lot earlier than we originally planned. I know a lot of folks in their 50s and early 60s, and I know very few of them who are still in a career track kind of field at the age that they are. Most folks that I know have kind of been cut out of the career track between ages 52 and 55. You're lucky if you make it any further than that. Now, I'm not going to vilify millennials and Gen Z and say, oh, they're trying to push us out, because I don't think that it's a conscious thing. I think that millennials and Gen Z do want opportunity that they feel is being taken up unfairly by people who won't get out of the way. I won't blame them for that, because the truth is, I probably felt the same way at the time. But more often than not, you're seeing that when younger people do get into positions of power in private industry, they're pushing out the older parts of the company, the people who have been there longer. There's a lot of reasons that can be. You know, there's the really cynical ones like, oh, they don't trust us or believe us or respect us or whatever. There's kind of things like, oh, I just don't want to be working with somebody who's like my dad. That makes me uncomfortable. There's the potential belief that we don't know enough about technology, that we're not going to be able to keep up, or that we're slowing the organization down. There's a lot of reasons why you find these millennial managers trying to push out Gen X and late boomer employees. And I think some of it just is flat out ageism, but it's very hard to prove. There are states where age discrimination is just illegal, but it's still very hard to prove, and it's very easy to disprove because there haven't been a lot of landmark cases about it. The funny thing about this trend, it's happening to Gen X, and like everything else in the Gen X experience, it's happening almost silently. There's no focus on it. There's no media attention. If there were this huge focus on getting rid of boomers, say 15 years ago, I think you would have heard about it, because that was a huge group of people. And now it's not that big a group of people, and it's a group of people that the media are used to ignoring. And so this silent movement toward offloading Gen X people is hardly mentioned. And it's a shame too, because just painting any group with the same brush is a mistake, no matter who they are. Not everybody in a single group is going to act the same way. There are those folks who are not going to embrace technology. There are going to be folks who say, well, Sonny, in my day, we didn't believe in that. Or folks who just aren't going to embrace the new trends very easily at a time when they really need to be embraced, who are going to bring a lot of very outdated attitudes into the workplace that shouldn't be there. There are those people. I agree, there are those people, but there are people who are not like that. There are people in every group that don't fit the stereotype. Matter of fact, probably more of them than do fit the stereotype. It's just the people with the stereotype, it's easy to point the finger, shine the light on them. So what's going to happen? I think that, baby boomers, if you can believe that they were a little bit more set up to save for retirement, well, Gen X is less set up to save for retirement, which is going to come 2 years later, but they're still better off than I think millennials and Gen Z are at this point. Times weren't necessarily better, but the idea of home ownership is a lot harder now. The disparity between wages and prices is very high now compared to any other time. And so if you're in your prime earning years, you're really feeling that. You may feel locked out of just simple things like home ownership or being able to send your kid to college because of that. Gen X had it a little bit easier in that regard, I agree, but it still left us woefully unprepared for retirement. And it's hard to know what's going to happen to all of us. I mean, Walmart only needs so many greeters. And there's a really dark path that we could be going down toward, this wave of Gen X homelessness and poverty and not being able to afford basics like medical care that is very possible. And it's possible because there is no media attention on it. And when there is no news, when there is no coverage of something, that's when it has the potential to multiply in its severity, to become a huge, huge, huge problem. And that is where we're at with Generation X and the retirement crisis. Generation X is facing a retirement crisis unlike any generation in the last 100 years. Prices are higher, and we are less prepared than our parents. Why should you care about Generation X and the retirement crisis if you're in your 40s or even early 50s at this point? Because, take it from me, if it happens to us, it's going to happen to you. There's a very old saying, as you sow, so shall you reap. And what that means is the way that you conduct yourself when you're young tends to have an impact on the way other people will conduct themselves around you when you're old. Even if you're not in the midst of the Gen X retirement crisis, even if you're in your mid to late 50s and you've still got a good job, this should worry the heck out of you because it can happen to you at any time. I know way too many people that this has happened to. And if you think it doesn't pertain to you, if you think it's not going to happen to you, think again. The crisis is real, folks, and it's only going to get worse. Do you think that it's going to be easier or harder to push millennials out when it's their turn? I mean, sure, you may make more noise about it and people may care more, but keep in mind there's even more Gen Z than there are millennials. They outnumber you. They outnumber you. And that means they're going to be able to push you out too. Well, I'm going to leave it on that depressing note. I am Stuart and I am your middle-aged hack. Please do me a favor, like and subscribe, if for no other reason to support Generation X and the retirement crisis, because if I reach the point where I can monetize this channel, well, that helps me cruise on in and plan for retirement instead of having retirement put upon me. That's it for the channel for today. I'm your middle-aged hack, and I'll see you next time.